Hello, Garland Nixon here, and kind of like Alexander Mercouris, I'm live from an undisclosed location. But at any rate, we got plenty to talk about. They're talking about trying to resolve this issue, and I think there's only one way out. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and everyone, let me know in the chat if the sound is okay. I'm doing things a little bit differently today because I am on the road. So if the sound's okay, let me know. A couple of things going on. Let me start here. That's interesting. Here's something interesting. I am suspended from Facebook for doing Facebook Lives again. So I was suspended for before we get into it, obviously, those of you who know me know I stay suspended from Facebook, right? But at any rate, and Facebook's dying. And you can look at Facebook and see that it is in fact a dying platform, and it's dying really fast. And it's suicide because the Zuckerberg et al had a very, very good thing going on. I mean, not that was thrilled, but he had a big money making machine going on. He brought in the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Research Lab, the DFRL, which is basically paid for by NATO and all of the warmongers and the warhawks to do his security, and they just completely suspended everybody all day, every day. I suspect, to be quite frank, that they want to kill Facebook, that this is just deliberate destruction of Facebook, because they just suspend the algorithms, that everybody's suspended all the time. Okay, so let's go on. Let me show you what happened here. Why is Garland Nixon? Let me make sure I got it straight here. Let me find all my restriction stuff. Let me find my restriction stuff so I can share it with you. Okay, let's go. Before we get into it, I'm just going to show you again. Let me share the screen. I don't have everything. Let's try this one. Okay, here goes. Let's start here. Look at this. I am restricted from Facebook, right? I'm restricted from Facebook, and it says, let me look at it. You can't advertise. You can't go live for 89 days. That's the big part. I was going live. I started doing all my lives on Facebook again. But why? Why is it that I can't go live for 89 days, right? Well, according to them, if I get this straight, you can't go live for 89 days. Let's see if this works out right. See why. Make sure it's the same thing. Okay, so what it basically says is I can't, because I shared this meme. But if you look at this meme that I shared, it's a meme that I shared. Let's see. Maybe this will give you a better picture of it. There you go. Is that giving you a better picture of it? Okay, so I shared this meme about Nazis in Ukraine, but look at the date on it. February 28th, 2022. So I'm now restricted from Facebook on April the 7th, 2023, because of a meme I shared in February of 2022, over 13 months ago. I shared a meme, and they suddenly said, you know what? You're doing a whole bunch of lives on Facebook, and we don't like that. So you can't go live for 80. Think about that, for 3 months. Now, keep in mind something. I just came back on because I was restricted from doing lives for 3 months. I did lives for a couple of weeks, and now they're saying you can't do lives for another 3 months. Why? Because you shared a video, and it had on there that it had something about Nazis, and that's unacceptable. We don't allow Nazi stuff, right? So they don't allow you to put Nazi stuff on Facebook. So clearly, I mean, I did that over a year ago, and I guess it just suddenly found out. They just suddenly recognized or noticed it, right? So they can't have Nazi stuff on Facebook, clearly, right? Is there anything that would dispute that? Let me see if I can find something. Now, here's something on Facebook right now. Well, what do you know? You can't share anything. And it said on there, now that's gone now, you can't find it, but it said that basically I shared the insignia that was hateful, hate-based insignia, blah, blah, blah. So I had something about Nazis and Ukraine and pictures of Ukrainian soldiers holding up Nazi flags. And I am suspended for 89 days right now because 13 months ago, I shared a picture of literal Ukrainian Azov battalion soldiers holding up their Nazi flag. That was their Nazi flag they held up. So you can't go live for 89 days because over a year ago you did something. Right now, today, this instant, this is what's up on Facebook right now. I searched Nazi and Putin under post. And what do you think the first thing that, so let me ask you this. Is that a hateful insignia? Yes, it is. Look at that. You see what I'm saying? So here's the bottom line. Once again, what we see is this has nothing to do. Facebook and what they're doing has nothing to do with actual standards. I violated their community standards. The problem they have is the same problem that the US government has when it comes to its foreign policy. And that is they have to lie to the American people, because if the American people knew the truth about their foreign policy, it would be unacceptable because it's unethical. It's vicious, brutal, and immoral to go around the world sanctioning countries, overthrowing the governments of countries, and doing all of these things just so you can steal their goods. You're making the world safe for corporate oligarchy, right? And that's the reality. But you can't tell the American people that. So what you have to do instead is you have to lie to them. That's the information war. Facebook can't come out and say, look, we're here to protect the Nazis in Ukraine. We're here to make sure that the US, the CIA, the people who pay us, the people who give us our information, the people who push us in the direction that they want us in, right? Those people support those Nazis in Ukraine. They created that. And so we can't have somebody pushing back against the Nazis in Ukraine. Those are our people, man. Those are our homeboys. Those are our bros, dude. Don't be messing with our bros. So that's what happened with Facebook. That's why I'm suspended again, because I'm messing with the bros of the Nazis, of the Nazis and the bros of the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Lab. Once again, the hypocrisy. I can't do it when it comes to literally showing Ukrainian soldiers holding up a Nazi flag, but somebody else can draw their own and write all kinds of stuff that should go against community standards. I don't think any of them should. I'm for free speech, but I just wanted to show you that so you'll know where we're going. And that takes me perfectly, that segues perfectly into what I'm talking about today. And that is, there's no way out for the US. There's no way out for there's only one way out in Ukraine. There's one way out of this thing, and that is, as the Russians have said, on a battlefield. See, what has happened recently, what we are hearing, one of the things that we're hearing out of Ukraine is that there are warnings coming to Zelensky, and that basically if he tries to negotiate with the Russians at some point, that he can't remain in power. He will lose power. He can't remain in power because there have been discussions about at least some flags things put up. You know, the old saying, we'll run it up a flagpole and see if anybody salutes. So there's been some thoughts run up the flagpole in Ukraine. And one of them is that the Ukrainians do the big offensive coming up in weeks, which is, again, I've talked about this in the past. Can you imagine me saying to you, you know, sometime probably next Thursday, I'm gonna come beat you up. You got from now to next Thursday to prepare. You can practice, you can get in shape, you can go get a baseball bat, a gun, a knife, and everything, so that when I walk in, you're planning on you. As soon as I walk in the door, you can smack me right in the head with a baseball bat and win. Why? Because I telegraphed what I was doing. Can you imagine the boxers are sitting there with their hands up, and one of them says, okay, next, I think I'm going to try to punch you. I'm going to try a jab to the right side of your face, and after that, I'm going to an uppercut. Okay, in exactly 2.3 minutes. Let's synchronize our watches. Who'd ever do that? Nobody would ever do this. But the fact is that this is not a military campaign. This is a political campaign, right? So they're doing a political campaign, and it is manifesting itself in a military way, unfortunately for the Ukrainians, because fighting a military campaign, a political campaign disguised as a military campaign it means a dramatic defeat. That's what it means. That's what it means. If you're the one who, you see, the Russians ain't fighting a political campaign. They're using artillery. Politics versus artillery. My bet's going to go on artillery every time. So the Russians are not fighting a military campaign on the ground. They're fighting a political campaign on the ground. They're fighting a military campaign. The proxies, if you're a proxy army, by the very nature of being a proxy army, means that you're a political tool. You're not a military tool. An army that works at the behest of a state government, and I mean country, means that it is either defending your state or it is aggressively, assertively, illegally, of course, acting violently against another state, but it's acting on behalf of the state. A proxy army is acting on behalf of the patron. The patron only needs that military for some very particular and specific political interests, which have nothing to do with the people in the military or nothing to do with the people in the state that the military comes from. So unfortunately for those poor schlubs in the Ukrainian army, they are a political tool. So now why would, let's face it, if they were your sons and daughters, you'd be very, very concerned about telegraphing when the next move was going to happen, right? Oh, we're going to attack on, in a couple of weeks. Well, you wouldn't do that if they were your sons and daughters. Why? Because you wouldn't want them to get killed in large numbers. But if in fact you are a patron, what do you care? They're not your sons and daughters. They are disposable. The nature of a proxy army is disposable. So now the patron, being the U.S., simply says, whenever we're ready, I'll throw these guys into the meat grinder, and then next move. They're already looking ahead. Well, we're going to throw these guys into the meat grinder. What happens? Well, if they're successful, that's great. We'll think about Crimea. Well, what happens if they lose? Well, and what they're saying is, if they lose, which they will, then we'll have to consider negotiations, right? If you're thinking about losing, going into a fight, don't fight, negotiate. First of all, read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. The idea should always be negotiate. Don't fight, negotiate. But if you ain't got nothing to lose and it's the next schlub that's dying, what do you give a crap if you're an evil neocon? But the bottom line is, they're going to throw these guys out there into the wood chipper. As David says, the wood chipper needs woods. Wood chipper's got to eat too, right? So they're going to throw these poor schlubs into the wood chipper, and when they're done, they're on to the next move. Here's the problem. So Zelensky's talking a bit about the possibility of negotiating afterwards, right? Well, that all sounds good and fine, but apparently the extremists, which the U.S. have keep in mind something, the extremists, let me just go here. The extremists aren't in favor of it. Basically, the extremists are more like saying, no, you can't negotiate. If you think about negotiating, you can't stay president. You can't stay in power. Why is that? My understanding is the Nazis' ideology has been nurtured in since, say, the 50s by the CIA in Ukraine to strengthen it, because it's by its very nature, it is implicitly anti-Russian. So it's like, here's an ideology that's anti-Russian. It's on Russia's border. Perfect. Let's nurture, let's grow this. And then we can have these people so angry, so hateful of Russians that they're so damn stupid that they'll throw themselves right into the meat grinder. I mean, how else? Let's face it. You have to turn somebody into a blind ideologue, or they're not going to be stupid enough to do what the damn Ukrainians are doing. They would stop and say, hey, wait a minute. You're throwing us into the meat grinder and we're all going to die, right? But first, you have to prep them. You have to turn them into this stupid, blind cult, so that when you point them at that chainsaw and say, run right into the chainsaw, they'll do it. That's what they did. They created, if you look at it, there's evidence, as the CIA has been in since like the 50s, basically nurturing and strengthening banderism, because they knew one of these days we're going to have to say to these bastards, we want you to go attack the Russians and you're probably all going to die. And we want them to cheer, yay, for the Russians, so we can all die. Well, you got to make them real stupid first. And that's what they did. Because Nazism by its very nature is very stupid. It's just, let's face it, look at any ideologue manifests itself as extremely stupid. One need only look at Tony Blinken and Biden and his crew of neocons to see how stupid and blind that being an ideologue makes you. So I continue. The U.S. built this ideology, strengthened this ideology, grew this ideology, right? So that they would be stupid enough to run up against the Russians, this superpower military next door, and think they had a chance, and actually believe that the U.S. was going to come in and help them, which they ain't. If they wanted to fight the Russians, they'd fight the Russians. That's what proxies are for. Bad news, Ukrainians. So now the Ukrainians are in the wood chipper. And the U.S. is, and at least some Europeans are thinking, well, maybe at some point we can negotiate. Now, keep in mind, one of the reasons they can't negotiate is because the Biden people are blind ideologues, and blind ideologues are by their very nature unable to negotiate. They're sociopaths, and sociopaths can't negotiate. They can't do that. In order to negotiate, you have to have, at minimum, you have to have strategic empathy, right? A strategic empathy doesn't mean that you empathize, that you consider how your adversary feels on an emotional level. It just means that you have the ability to consider how your adversary feels, even if you want to take advantage of your adversary. Strategic empathy at least means I got to think of what they want, why they want it, how they feel, and therefore I'll know how to effectively even counter things if I want to. I'll know how to play my hand in negotiations. But if you're a pure narcissist and sociopath like Blinken and those guys, you can't even manifest strategic empathy yourself. You don't have the ability to do that. The issue of empathy, you don't have the tools, the emotional tools needed to be empathetic, to consider that your adversary, to consider that your adversary has needs. You don't have the emotional tools available to do that. You can only think to yourself, this is what I want. This is why I want it. This is how I'm going to get it. So you don't have the tools available to you to negotiate. So for starters, there cannot be no negotiation, because if Blinken and Biden and those crew, if everything was falling apart for them and they said we have to negotiate, they couldn't do it. They don't have the tools. They would have to take into consideration what the Russians want and give them some of it. They would have to offer them something, even if it was a old stale piece of bread. They would have to say, we'll give you a little teeny bit, and in return, we want you to give us a lot. Well, that's at least the start of negotiations. If you looked at the way the neocons negotiate with the Iranians, if you look at how they negotiate with the North Koreans, it's okay, let's start here. Before we even negotiate, you have to give us everything you want. Once you give us everything we want, what they say to the North Koreans, get rid of your nukes and then we'll negotiate. Well, if they get rid of their nukes, there ain't nothing to negotiate, is there? So the Bolton, Blinken, Biden neocons don't understand they're such narcissists, they can't even grasp the concept of negotiations. All they know is they're like a little child that has a toy and they're playing with the toy. They don't understand empathy yet. Another child wants to play with the toy too. No, it's mine, it's mine. And you say to the child, no, little Johnny. We'll give it to you for a little while, and then we'll give it to little Joey. You take it, you give it to, and the kid throws it. No, they go crazy because they don't have the concept yet of empathy. They just know that's a toy. The emotional tools haven't developed. They're still kind of like, there's a toy, and I like this toy, and it's in my hand. And if you take it away, I won't have it anymore. I don't understand that, and I'm upset, and I'm going to scream and cry because I want it back. I'm in a panic. I'm flown into an anger and a panic, right? Well, that's how these neocons are. They have not developed emotionally past the level of a little teeny child. So it's, hey, I want to negotiate with you. Okay, you give me all the toys and then we'll start negotiating. No, that's not negotiating. That's narcissism. I want half, you want half. No, okay, all right, okay. Oh, you want me to negotiate it fair? First of all, you give me 100% of everything, and then we'll negotiate. What's left to negotiate after that? Apparently, you don't grasp the issue of the way negotiation works. So, because the neocons are so narcissistic and sociopathic that they cannot even grasp the concept of strategic empathy or negotiation, just forget it before we even get to the Nazis. The neocons can't negotiate, can't do it if they want to. If everything's burning around them, if everything's falling apart, and the entire country is in flames, people are in the street and they say, we want you to negotiate right now or we're going to come cut all your heads off. Literally, let me tell you this. I believe this. Biden and the neocons are sitting in a room. Think about this. And I know you'll probably agree. Biden and the neocons are sitting in a room, right? They're all sitting in a room and they're planning their evil plots, right? And what do you know? Out of nowhere, in pops an alien, and they can see because this person just like kind of magically teleported into their room with them. And the alien looks at the Biden and Blinken and Newell, and he says, let me tell you guys something. I've had it up to here with your crap. We've been watching you from our ship, and we decided to give you a chance. We don't want this thing to go in a bad direction. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you 1 week. And here's what you have to do. You have to call the Russians. You have to back off of this thing. You have to negotiate a deal in 1 week, right? You got 1 week. If you don't do that, we're going to kill every one of you. Every one of you. If we don't do that, now it won't be painful. It's kind of like, you ever watch Star Trek with the phasers where they point a phaser and they point it, and then the person just kind of turns into like a white kind of bland outline and they disappear. That's how you'll go. Nice and easy, no pain, no gain, right? But you got exactly 1 week from now to go to the Russians and get a deal. And you better give up a lot, and you better back off, and you better get the hell out of Ukraine. And we're the aliens. We can do it. Do you understand? If you don't, every one of you, you're out of here. And and then they could say, and just as in case you think we're bluffing, here's what we're going to do, right? And they looked at some minor neocon sitting over there, like, see that guy over there? If you ever watch Star Trek, remember they always had the guy in the red suit. They'd like land on a planet, and there'd be like Captain Kirk, and there'd be Spock, and what have you, and then there was Ensign Smithers, right? And this is a guy you never seen before, and he looked kind of hapless, wandering around with his phaser pointing in the wrong direction, and just he'd push his button, like, Captain, that didn't work right, So you had Ensign Smithers, right? Well, okay, effectively in this scenario, you've got the Ensign Smithers of neocons. This guy's just sitting over there. Let's just say he's got a red jacket on, and the alien looks over at that guy and says, I used to watch Star Trek, and I think I know what that guy's here for. And the alien says, okay, here's what we're going to do. In case you don't believe us, we're going to give you a demonstration. And he points to Ensign Smithers, and he turns into a white outline, and he's gone. And they say to him, oh, no, what happened to Ensign Smithers? We'd like him back. And the alien says, Ensign Smithers ain't coming back. From where Ensign Smithers has gone, no man has ever come back. He's done. That's it. It's all over for Ensign Smithers. So that was just a demonstration. I even suspect that's why when you found, you saw an alien, I suspect that's why you called the guy in a room, because you knew somebody was getting sacrificed. And hey, poor old Ensign Smithers, may his soul rest in peace. And boom, the alien's gone. So now the neocons are sitting in a room, and they got 7 days, and every one of them knows that if they don't get a deal with the Russians in 7 days, they're all going the way of Ensign Smithers, right? The alien has made it clear. He's given a demonstration. He's not happy with what you're doing in Ukraine. He wants you to get out of Ukraine and get a deal. Now, what would you and I think? We think to ourselves, I ain't going down the road of Ensign Smithers. These guys have made it clear. And, this neocon ideology is all good and fine, but it's only going to last about a week. And you say hey, alien, can you come back? And the alien pops back in the room. He's like, what's up, guys? And you say, look, just out of curiosity, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we don't get that deal in a week, and you kill us all. And the alien says, yeah, okay. Then what are you going to do? And the alien says, I'm just going to get the deal myself. He says, yeah, I'm an alien. I'm just going to go to the Russians and I'm going to effectively say this. And I'm going to put some new people in charge here. And I'll just snap my fingers. All of your military stuff will be, none of it will work anymore. I will completely disarm your country in every way, shape, and form. And I'll go to the Russians and I'll say, I'll disarm these people. They're no more threat to them. You guys are going to have to go home because none of your tanks, nothing will run. So here's the bottom line. Neocons, you got 1 week. We're the aliens. We decided to give you 7 days. You got 7 days to get a deal on your own with the Russians. Get the hell out. If you don't do that, for everybody in this room, Biden, Sullivan, Newland, all of you guys, you're dead. Number one. Number two, I'm going to get the deal anyway. So what the hell? I'm an alien. You can't do much here with this. You know, we popped into the room, teleportation. You guys really ain't there. You're kind of ants to us. So what we're going to do is I'm out of here 7 days. I get the deal or you're all dead and I get the deal. So either way, the deal's going to be gotten. So just, okay. So that's the scenario. Adios. The alien teleports out. So now you got Newland and Blinken and Biden and Sullivan, and their job is to contact the Russians and get a deal. And they got 7 days to do it, right? Now, what would you or I do? We would call everyone together. We'd say, well, get the hell out. We'd call the Russians. We'd say, hey, guys, look, it would be nice if you could give us something in return, but we're getting out. You call the Pentagon, everybody, we're out, we're done with this thing, game, set, and match. We're out of here. Why? A, if you don't, you're dead. B, if you don't, you're dead, and the alien's going to get the deal anyway. So what point is it to die for absolutely nothing? The alien has made it clear, you guys got 7 days, you get the deal, or I'm killing you, and I'll get the deal. And I'm disarming your entire country, disarming everything you have, nothing will work anymore. You're disarmed for the next 50 years. And all the other, in fact, we're going to take the African countries, the Latin American countries, and we're going to give all of them spaceships and lasers so they can do with you as they please. You will be at their mercy. So your choice is get the deal or you become the weakest country in the world at the mercy of everybody else, but you're not going to find out because everybody in this room is going to be dead. So that's the scenario. Guess what? They wouldn't get the deal. You know what Biden and Blinken would do? They'd start calling the Russians. Well, we'd like to make an offer because they couldn't do it. They don't have the emotional tools. You and I would think rationally and we'd say the deal's going to be gotten. We're going to be dead. And the country's going to be weak and everybody else is going to be strong. So it serves us no purpose not to get the deal. There's nothing in it for us. This thing is over. So let's go get the deal. We call the Russians. What do you need for the deal? The Russians have already given them a list in like 2021 of December. They gave them a list of demands, right? And it wasn't like real terrible stuff. It was like back off all the NATO infrastructure from our border back to the 1991, right? It was get your missiles and stuff like that off our border. It was stuff like that, right? It was like the U.S. is surrounding Russia with bases and missiles. And basically the Russians gave them a list of demands that was basically saying, don't surround us with bases and missiles anymore. Stop putting your nukes in other people's countries, pointing at people. It was stuff that I would all agree with. Any peace-loving person would say let's not do that because that could start a war, right? All the neocons would have to do and say, look, Russians, here's what we're doing. We're going by this deal. Oh, and we're going for this deal. And everything you ask, we're going to give it to you. And here's how we're going to guarantee it. We're going to start today. We're going to call a ceasefire. We're going to contact all the Europeans and say, as effective today, the ceasefire, blah, 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 right? So we do all of that. That's what I do. That's what you do, because otherwise you're dead and they get the deal anyway, right? So at that point, you're good. Neocons couldn't do it. They don't have the emotional tools able to do it. Every one of them would be killed by the alien in 7 days. And they'd try to negotiate with the alien when they got back. Right? They would call the Russians and say, well, we'd like a deal. Well, first of all, you're going to have to give up Crimea. They give the Russians the same deals they've been giving them. You got to give up Crimea and everything and blah, blah, blah. The Russians say, get out of here. We're going to keep fighting. They call back. Okay. Fair enough. we're willing to let you keep Crimea for another 3 hours before you actually get rid of Crimea. And then all the weapons in Crimea, you're going to have to take them, transfer them to the Ukrainians. Then your gross domestic product for the next 100 years all goes to Ukraine, to the Nazis in Ukraine. We're willing to negotiate that down to 99 years and 11 and a half months if you want. We'll give you an extra 30 days. But other than that, and the Russians would say, get out of here. We're not talking to you. And they just keep doing that. They don't have the ability, the rationality to say, the Yellen's going to kill us. And the Russians are going to get the best deal. And our whole country's weakness. No, I'll put it like this. Think about this. A psychopath, a sociopath thinks like this. This is in front of me and I want it and I can get it. I'll take it. They're stuck in the moment. They're the ultimate Zen people, right? You're sitting in a room. I've seen this kind of thing happen. You've probably heard these stories. When I was in law enforcement, I've seen these kinds of scenarios happen. Me and you are sitting in a room, not exactly like this, but you and I are sitting in a room. This is the way a sociopath thinks. You and I are sitting in a room. I got $100. I lay it on the table. We're the only two in the room. I look over. Hey, what's that out the window? I look back. $100 is gone. Hey, why'd you take my $100? I don't know what you're talking about. That's the way a sociopath thinks. When you look the other way, they're like, hey, there's $100. I want that $100 and I can get it. They take it and stick it in their pocket. The idea that in about a half a second, your face is going to turn back and you're going to know they did it doesn't dawn on them. That would be thinking about the future. That would be thinking about what's going to happen as a result. No, that's not how sociopaths think. So Blinken does not have the emotional tools. Those people don't have the emotional tools to think, you know, if I don't get this deal in a week, I'm dead. And the deal goes through anyway. That's a week away. The sociopath is caught right now. The alien would come back in a week and he'd say that he'd look at them. He'd say, hey, guys. They'd be like, yes. And they'd be like, we prepared a document for you. And he'd say, oh, that's real nice. Yes. We've made a number of proposals to the Russians. And as of yet, they haven't accepted our proposals. And but we believe that another round of talks will be all it will take for the Russians to give up and to give up Crimea and to give us everything that we want. And the alien would be like, and what was the response from the Russians, by the way? And he'd say, well, they told us go to hell. And the documents that we gave them, they crumbled them up and lit them on fire and threw them in the trash. And then they took the trash can and they ran that over with a tank. They melted it down into a ball, into a metal ball, and they took it to the middle of the ocean, the deepest part of the ocean, and they threw it overboard so that it would go down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. That's what they did with that. That's how they responded. And they would say, and what do you think happens now? And then you'll kind of be like, well, we really think, I mean, let's quite frank, we've done our due diligence. We figure we got another, let's like work for another, say, 6 months. I know 7 days didn't really work for us. Probably doesn't work for you. Let's make it another 6 months. 6 months, guys. Everybody go with 6 months? Yeah, we will come up with 6 months. 6 months. How's that sound? Snap his finger, they're all disappear, and he'd do it anyway. Every one of them would die if their lives depended on it. If they knew there was no way out and they had to get a deal, the neocons couldn't get the deal because they don't have the emotional tools to do that. You cannot accomplish what you don't have the tools to do. So as far as the neocons are concerned, no way out, no possibility of striking a deal with neocons. That just ain't happening. Now, let's go to the Nazis. In that, I already hit them, but I'll touch base on that. In that, the U.S. created this irrational machine intentionally. You know what they did? And I've used this term. It's like having a pet werewolf, right? It's like having a pet werewolf. You know, great. That pet werewolf will tear your enemies to shreds. I mean, you got a pet werewolf, let him loose. And you're like, I don't like these people. Well, he goes in and he tears them all to shreds. He, as Warren Zevon would say, he, tears their lungs out. He bites their legs off. He tears them apart, right? But you got a problem. Werewolves can't be trained. And so when he's finished with them and you say to the werewolf, all right, good work, guy, come over here, roll over, kneel. Werewolves don't roll over. They don't heal, kneel. They don't do anything of that. He's looking at you next. The concept of a werewolf, if you think about it, why is a werewolf? The werewolf movies, I've always liked them. I'm always trying to psychoanalyze myself and say, why is it that I like werewolf movies, right? Because I think it's that Carl Jung thing that in our mind we have various parts, right? We have a nice calm and relaxed part of our mind. Then we have we have the id, the ego, and the super ego, which I don't really believe in, but that's the belief, you know what I mean? That's the whole Freudian thing, right? But that there is something in us in us that is nice and calm and thoughtful. There's something in us, in our mind also. For instance, when you see a bear coming at you, the sheer panic, it doesn't think, it doesn't stop to be rational. It's just like, I'm getting out of here, and any way I can preserve my life, I'm going to do it, right? And that concept of a werewolf is this thing inside of a man that is just total brutality, vicious, violent, out of control. That it's like it's natural in a way, because werewolves, are really, they can smell, and they're real fast and powerful. They're like wild animals. They chase deer down and eat them. If you see a werewolf movie, if he gets out in the woods, it'll chase a deer and kill a deer or something too, whatever, who cares? You're a werewolf. There's something there to kill. It's what you do, right? So that werewolf thing is attractive to people because the werewolf is out of control, brutality, violence, and anger. Okay. And I think we see that every human has that in us, and maybe that's why we're attracted. In this context, the CIA created effectively a werewolf to let loose on Russia. Because see, a werewolf, the other thing a werewolf doesn't do, it doesn't stop to think, right? You got a gun with silver bullets, and a werewolf standing in front of you, you say, look, werewolf, this gun's got silver bullets, and if I shoot you, you're dead. You're done. You're toast. So why don't you just chill out, go on back, do your werewolfy things, and we'll talk about when you turn back into my buddy Fred. Fred, we'll go have a brew tomorrow night. It's not going to be full moon anymore. We'll hang out, right? We'll go to the bar, go to the babes there. We'll turn up a pint. Oh, it's going to be nice, right? You say that, Fred ain't listening. Fred's a werewolf. He doesn't have the concept of self-preservation. He's going to charge you. You're going to have to shoot him with that, and then he's going to fall to the ground. He's going to transform back into poor old Fred, and you're going to look down and tear. You know how the movie ends, a tear. Fred, I didn't want to do it, Fred. Fred's like, it's okay. I'm going to a better place now. And then he smiles and he's gone, right? That's so much for Fred. Well, now, that's what they had to create, that werewolf, because this thing they created, this Nazi ideology that they infected Ukraine, it was already there, that they nurtured, right? And they grew it in Ukraine. That created a thought process that says, I'm not going to worry about myself. I just got to get these Russians. That's all it is. You hate the Russians. Yeah, we got to get the Russians. Okay. You want to kill the Russians no matter what. Who cares about your own life as long as you kill Russians? And the Nazis are like, yes, kill Russians, kill Russians, kill Russians, right? Don't worry about yourself. So now, they're like, okay, guys, here's your chance. Go kill Russians. So the Nazis are getting wiped out like cordwood, just mowed down in ungodly numbers. So, people who are really paying attention to this thing is like, man, this is kind of nasty. I mean, geez, you're just throwing these freaking Ukrainians to the artillery, and they're coming back in body bags. What's left of them? Can you, maybe give them a break? Well, neocons ain't giving nobody a break. Again, they're sociopaths. They're fine with that. That's what, from their perspective, they see the Ukrainians as subhuman, and that's the Ukrainians' job to get torn to shreds. That's what subhumans are supposed to do, according to the neocons. So now, when the situation, and meanwhile, neocons they got other fish to fry. Oh, we got China, we got to go after them. Oh, we got North Korea, we got to go after them. Oh, we got Iran. They got other wars to start. You're screwing around with them, and they got other people. And this one, this toy is not fun anymore. It's broken. They had a plan for this toy, and this toy was to go get Russia, and they tried it, and it's broken. All my toys broke. What do you do? Well, we'll go get a new toy, Iran or China, North Korea, somewhere, anywhere. Who cares? But we got other things to do. This one ain't working, so let's abandon it. So at some point, of course, the neocons are going to be like, all right, go ahead and negotiate a deal. Well, Zelensky can't negotiate a deal, because if he does, they'll kill him. When the extremists in Ukraine say, Zelensky, you can't negotiate a deal and maintain power. They don't mean that you're getting a golden parachute. They don't mean you're getting a gold watch. They don't mean thanks for your 20 years. We're going to have a nice little celebration and a ceremony for you. And at that point, go on to your estate, which is Zelensky's plan, right? Is to go to his estate and out just outside of Miami and, soak it up and spend the blood money that he's got. No. Mm-mm. What they mean is they're going to fill you full of holes. So what they're saying to Zelensky basically now is if you try to negotiate, even if we lose, you can't negotiate, right? If the Russians get to the Dnieper River and surround Kiev, you can't negotiate. We got to fight until we all die. What did Hitler do in the end? He put a bullet in his head. He killed himself or poisoned, whatever the hell. Bottom line was he ended up dead. That's the end for a Nazi. A Nazi's like, at the end, I will die a glorious death and go to Valhalla or whatever, right? So these people that this element that we've created in Ukraine, and these people that we've surrounded Zelensky with, they're like, yeah, we'll negotiate. We're going to kill the Russians to the end, and when they get to the center of Kiev, then we'll blow ourselves up or something, or we'll die gloriously by poisoning ourselves and our wives and putting a bullet in our heads valiantly. The last bullet is for me. That's the way Nazis think. And the Russians know it. That's why recently, I believe it was Lavrov or Peskov that said, look, there's only one way this thing ends at this point on the battlefield. They understand it. So at some point, you're going to find the Europeans, especially, I think that's where it comes from first. I think the Europeans are going to say, let's make a deal. And they're really going to pressure them, and maybe even the neocons at some point will say, "Let's make a deal." And that's when the Europeans will find out the neocons have neither the inclination nor the ability to make a deal with the Russians. Because think about this: if they make a deal, they're going to have to get, and the Russians are winning. See, they're always talking about, yes, when there's negotiations, implying that there's going to eventually be negotiations. When there are, we want the Ukrainians to be in a good position for negotiations. Well, let me tell you something. In a war, if you're in a good position, you don't need to negotiate. The guy in the good position has no need to negotiate. The guy who's laying on the ground about to get his city overrun is the one who has to negotiate. And at that point, there's only one way to negotiate, and that's signing that unconditional surrender. So if and when they do this, if things go as they appear to be now, keep in mind something, and they do this offensive now, keep in mind something. It could be all a fake. It could be all a fraud. There could be no offensive now. That could be weeks away. That could be months away. That could be maybe never. I don't know. But let's just say for the sake of argument that they do this offensive, right? They do it offensive. If they do this offensive and it, as I suspect, it ends up catastrophically, the losses will be catastrophic. No matter what happens, I suspect the Russians are prepared for an offensive, and they're prepared to put a lot of ordnance on these people. And I suspect, sorry about that, I bumped the counter, that the losses will be catastrophic. And if you're getting all of this gear and all of this stuff together, then after that offensive, you kind of shot your wad. You know what I mean? At that point, it seems to me, it appears to me, unless it's all propaganda, and it may be, that they're getting together for one big go at it. We're going to do this thing and we're going to make a big go at it. The problem is if the big go doesn't work, you're in a world of trouble. If the big go doesn't work, you got problems. Because at that point, you have used up all your reserves, which means that the Russians will break through, and there ain't much to stop them at that point, and everything that you have is falling apart. And now again, the term I look at is collapse. You're going to have somewhat of a military collapse, and to me, a subsequent political collapse. And the Russians are going to be in no mood to negotiate. And as I said, to end this thing up, the neocons don't have the tools to negotiate, and they've created a monstrous group of ideologues that kind of mirror them in Ukraine that are similar in a way. And it's not just that they don't have the tools, they don't have the inclination, because they're blind ideologues. And that's where it ends. So that means that the Russians have to do this. Now, I think at some point too, the European leadership, well, the bottom line is, when I say the European people aren't going to be thrilled with this. So the European people are going to really freak out on their leaders. And you're going to see some real problems as the European people look at what's going on there and say, we want something different. And their leaders are unable. They're going to say, we want a negotiated end. We want something. This thing's over. And the cat's out of the bag now. Because if it goes as I suspect it will, then they have been told you have to make all these sacrifices and do all this suffering so as to defeat the Russians. And what happens if you lose to the Russians, which I suspect was what happened. So they've done all of this to defeat the Russians, and they don't defeat the Russians. And now it's obvious that they're going to lose to the Russians. And it was all for naught. You're going to have a real major problem socially in Europe and really the U.S. I mean, now don't get me wrong, these dummies in the U.S. I mean, the MSNBC and Fox will just point them in another direction and put their hands on their heads and turn your head this way, look over there, look, oh, there's a new pandemic. Oh, wait a minute, oh, there's China, the communists over there. So they'll just point in another direction. Hey, look, there's Iran, whatever, right? So over here, the blind eye, Trump, there's Trump. The idiots here, I don't account for much. They ain't going to be in the streets, okay? They're not going to be in the streets. But the Europeans, I suspect, are not going to be happy with this, and they're going to be demanding things that their leaders are unable to get them, which means in the long term, European leadership is toast, all of them. And that also, at that point, will end up with this. And at that point, the U.S.'s plan to go up against China, to build this gigantic military infrastructure, in the Pacific to, as they say, deter China. It just means really to menace and threaten China. When everything collapses, you're going to have problems there, because to do that without Europe, and in fact, to do that if Europe's pushing against you, to do that when the entire world is saying you're wrong, don't do it, and you just lost. And you just made fools out of yourselves with your last endeavor. And there's even going to be people here saying, look, man, after the way that Russia thing turned out, and it's still turning out, perhaps this ain't such a bright idea. So do the neocons fall in the U.S.? We will see. I don't know what happened. But they are heading for some real problems. At any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. As I said, here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to look for some super chats, because I'd like to answer any. Okay, let's go. If there's super chats, we're going to answer them. Same with Rockfin. All right. If there's super chats, I've been out for a couple because I'm on holiday, as they say. Welcome to the USA. Banana Republic founded on November 22nd, 1963. Good point. I like that. RFK is running. Isn't that interesting? I'm gonna do a video and talk about that at some point too. Sparky says, seems to me because the West has proven untrustworthy, so Russia can't accept anything less than unconditional surrender. That's the other part of it. They can't do a deal, but they can't because Russia can't accept anything, can't believe anything. Come on, Biden and the neocons, Victoria Nuland, would you believe anything that she said, or any of these people? I mean, these are the people that attacked the Nord Stream pipeline. Sparky says, France and Germany failed to back up Minsk too, but maybe Russia would accept Turkey and China as guarantors of a new agreement. West might not go for it. They can't go for it, but I agree. Yeah, you're going to have somebody else if there's a new agreement. And the U.S. can't accept that. The U.S. can't accept Turkey and China as guarantors, so the U.S. is in a mess. A new win situation for the neocons. Okay, let's look at Rockfin. All right, we got some people. Scott Johnson. Thanks a lot, Scott Johnson. I think that's it. That is it on Rockfin. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. I think that's it for me. Certainly appreciate everybody taking out the time. And if you can, don't forget, I will give you the usual on the way out. If you can afford, PayPal's great. Buy me a coffee is great. My Cash App info is there if you can afford any donation to help the channel. And as I said, I'm building my trying to build out my studio at home. But don't forget, also follow me on Telegram and go over to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon to make sure you become a member. It doesn't cost anything to be a member on Rockfin. So go over there and become a member. That way, if they toss me off of Facebook for some reason, you can still find me there. Also, they don't have ads, so it's absolutely fantastic. You will love Rockfin. And it's uncensored. So if I say something, I'm not going to get tossed like I am off Facebook right now. I'm not going to get suspended for saying the wrong thing because Rockfin is not censored. I always tell everybody, you should have anybody doing a show like that, and everyone here, if it's me or Jimmy Dore, whoever, follow us on YouTube, but follow us whatever the other thing we're on, if it's Rumble or whatever, because you know YouTube might just wake up one day, it's owned by Google, and say the Garland Nixons and Jimmy Dores and Durans of the world, all of you, IRL Grays, all of you, you're out of here. So make sure that you go to another platform and follow us there. Rockfin doesn't cost anything, so please become a Rockfin member. If you choose, how does Rockfin stay on the air? How do they stay in business since they don't do advertisements and they don't charge anything? You can become a subscriber if you choose to be if you become a subscriber on my channel. It costs $14.99 a month to be a subscriber on the Garland Nixon's channel on Rockfin. I certainly appreciate that. If you sign up for a year, it will if you sign up for 1 year, it will be cheaper because they give you a couple months free. And so I would appreciate anybody who can sign up to a member of my channel. It helps the channel out, helps raise funds here so I can get my stuff going as far as my studio is concerned. So, but if you can't, keep your money and just become a regular member. If you become a subscriber, what you do get out of that is every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. I do a subscribers only show with Scott Ritter. So that's what you get. But being a subscriber is about being a subscriber and helping out the channel if you can on Rockfin. So thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon. Bye.